Welcome to Summit. We strive to be a church where you can belong long before you come to believe.
At each of our locations, we worship together, we learn and grow together, and we serve together. And we form relationships around a common purpose, to inspire people to find and follow the way of Jesus.
Now take a moment and scan a QR code. That leads to our guide for all things Summit. You'll discover info about events, ways to engage in community here, resources mentioned in today's sermon, and ways to give.
Now, as we jump into our service today, we invite you to lean in, offer your attention to the Lord, and may the grace of Jesus be with you always.
Hi guys, I'm Kaylee. Thanks for joining us. We are in the penultimate week of our series Life Under the Sun, where we have been exploring the strange and often melancholy wisdom of the book of Ecclesiastes. And we've met the major players of the wisdom literature who together give us a more complete picture of what we can expect from this life. Remember, the wisdom literature is like three different perspectives on the same house. One book shows us the inside, one shows us the outside, and one shows us the aerial view, which demonstrates that we are in a floodplain. They work together to paint a more complete vision of what we can expect in this mortal life. Proverbs with her message of justice, right? If you do right by God, the world will do right by you. And then Job, who kind of uncomfortably clears his throat and says, actually, if you do right by God, the world might still do you dirty. And then Ecclesiastes, who steps in between and says, you can do right or you can do wrong, but human wisdom cannot predict what will happen to any of us because hevel, everything is hevel. Hevel, that Hebrew word which often in your Bibles is translated meaningless or vanity, but which actually means smoke or vapor, something that looks solid but isn't. You reach out your hand and it passes right through. You can't make sense of it. It is enigmatic, confusing, frustrating, unpredictable. Hevel, everything is hevel. And so in a world of hevel, the teacher of Ecclesiastes poses the question, what is good for man to do? All his toilsome days under the sun in this world of hevel. Last week, we talked about the ways in which we try to find our fulfillment apart from God, within our own power. So wealth, pleasure, power, even wisdom, we found fall short of the test of eternity. And this week, we're going to take the teacher's question a step further. Okay, now we know what isn't good for man to do all of his days under the sun. So what is? What is worthwhile to do if we can't control the outcomes, if we can't take anything with us except our relationships, if we can't spend our dollars in heaven, if real estate doesn't cross dimensional lines, then what am I supposed to do like today, for example? I mean, does it even matter if I brush my teeth, let alone floss? Actually, I'm just kidding. I floss every night because even though cavities are not eternal, they are temporarily expensive. So if things are, as the teacher tells us, unpredictable, fleeting hevel, how should we live in a world that can't be tamed on this side of heaven? In the long list of things that the teacher provides that he says are just hevel, is there anything that isn't? Yes, there is, and we can be sure it is because he doesn't just say it once. He says it 5 times, 5 different places. It's like a cadence that he comes back to. Chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 5, 8, 9, and they all sound something like this. Ecclesiastes 2:24, a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him who can eat or find enjoyment. Ecclesiastes 3:22, so I saw that there is nothing better for a person to do than to enjoy their work because that is their lot, for who can bring them to see what will happen after them? Ecclesiastes 8:15, so I commended enjoyment of life, because there is nothing better for a person to do under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany them all their toilsome days of the life God has given them under the sun. The author returns to this idea 5 separate times. It is his most consistent message alongside of everything's hevel and we're all going to die. So the same teacher who has already told us that work is futile and pleasures are fleeting has now told us not once but 5 times that we should still find satisfaction in our apparently futile work and joy in our nothing but fleeting pleasures. Some commentators think this is the teacher being sarcastic, like everything's meaningless, so you might as well do what you want. Like, eat, drink, and be merry, suckers. But again, that is inconsistent with our whole house, right? The picture that all three books have shown us together. When we look at our house from all three angles, we can know that the teacher is not being sarcastic with his command to find joy in our fleeting pleasures and satisfaction in our futile work, but it is admittedly confusing. And so we're going to spend some time to unpack this a bit so we can really appreciate what it is the teacher is telling us to actually do with all our toilsome days under the sun. So we'll start with the toil, the work, and then we'll make our way toward the eating and drinking. A common theme in this book is that in a fallen world, what you put in terms of effort does not often match what you get out in terms of outcomes. You can do the right thing and the sensible thing, and you can still get nonsense in return because hevel, everything is hevel. I experienced this for myself this summer in what turned out to be one of the most hevelish days that I've ever lived in my entire life. I was staying with my niece Kaden, who's 15, while her parents and older sister were on a mission trip to Malawi, which you probably saw in the beautiful video that Michael Margio made of that trip on Africa Sunday. And I had great expectations of what this time was going to be like. We were going to bond, we were gonna go to Target, they have a pool. I just thought that it was gonna be lovely. My husband Rob couldn't stay with us because they have 2 cats and he is super allergic, but they also have 2 dogs, and I love dogs, so I thought that was gonna be great. However, one of the dogs was new to the house, Theo. He is a puppy, albeit a very big puppy at 70 or 80 pounds. And what I didn't know until the day I moved in with Theo is that Theo is a butt biter. He has the instincts of a herding dog, but his strategy for moving people where he wants them to go is to bite their butts. And that was real hard. So I thought about calling Rob, but I thought, no, I can handle this. I can handle this butt biting dog by myself. Not gonna call Rob. But then there's the other dog, the elderly dog, Bailey, my queen, who is a perfect beagle, and she's 100 years old and she's on heart meds twice a day. And I did not anticipate how hard it would be to make sure Theo wasn't annoying Bailey. I thought about calling Rob, but I said, nope, I can do this. I can separate 2 dogs. I am an adult woman. I can do this. But I didn't anticipate how quickly Theo could break into the laundry room and then eat all week's worth of the cat's food in what felt like 2 gulps. So the week, it just ended up being a lot harder than I expected to. And I thought about calling Rob, but I thought, no, I'm sure I can do this. And then my last morning, the morning before the Porters were supposed to get home, I wake up to the sound of my niece's sobs, and she comes into the room and she tells me that Bailey has died in the night. And sure enough, she has. And so I text with Allison, who was on a layover, thank goodness, in Kenya and could receive text messages. And we decide that I should take Bailey to the vet to be cremated, and then she can pick up the remains when she gets home. So in the course of the morning, I realized that I have to take care of 1 dead dog, 1 living dog who I can't let out of his crate due to what he might do to the dead dog, and 1 very understandably upset teenager. So I decided it was time to call Rob. So I call Rob, I tell him what happened, and I ask him to put Bailey in the back of his truck and to take her to the vet because I want to be here for Caden. He says, of course, I'll be right over. So 20 minutes, he pulls up and I'm consoling Caden, and then 5 minutes after that, he walks into the house and says, small problem. I was just stung by a wasp, and my dad is allergic, and my arm is starting to swell, and I took 3 Benadryl, but I might have to go to the emergency room. And I was like, okay, put Bailey in my car, and I will drop you off at the ER on my way to the vet. So Rob grabs Bailey's body, which was now wrapped in curtains. I don't know where the curtains came from. They're not my curtains. They're still a mystery to me. He has her wrapped in curtains, and he kind of tosses her into the back of my car, and we jump in the car and we start driving to the ER. And we get there, and Rob's like, I might be okay. Maybe we should just sit here for like an hour and see, if I need to go in or not. And I was like, I love you so much, but 2 things. 1, I can't deal with dead dog, dead husband, same day. So I really want you to go in. 2, Bailey's been dead a long time now, and she's really starting to smell, and I really, really want to get her out of my car. And he's like, you know what, you're right. So he goes into the ER, and I go along to the veterinary office, where I walk in and say, I have a dead dog in my car, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And I say, it's actually not mine, but thank you. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll send someone out to help you with the animal. So I go back to the car. A couple minutes later, a woman comes out to help me, and she is, about my height, but about half my size. And I think this is going to be hard, but we do our best. We try to get Bailey. The problem is that Rob, in his haste, understandably, just kind of tossed Bailey in there. But she's been dead at least 12 hours. And so she, like, rigor mortis has set in. She is stiff and she is now wedged between my back seat and my front seat. So me and this tiny woman are trying to like eject her from the car. And at one point I have, the mystery curtains wrapped around my arm twice, and I have one foot on the side of the car and I'm pulling and she is pushing. And I think we start to make progress, but then I realized that Bailey's just slipping out of the back of the curtains and we're like, no. So she ties up, it was like Weekend at Bernie's, except with a dog. Weekend at Bailey's. So finally we get Bailey out of the car and into the veterinary office, and the vet comes in and says, I'm so sorry, but unless we can get verbal confirmation that you are authorized to speak on behalf of the deceased, we can't take Bailey today. And I said, her owners are in Africa. And she's like, yes, I understand that, but we need verbal confirmation. I said, I have text messages. She's like, it has to be verbal. And I was like, okay. So what you're telling me is that if I can't get Allison on the phone, that I have to put that dead dog back in my car. And she's like, yes, I'm really sorry. And I was like, okay. So I try to call Allison. Praise Jesus, she answered the phone. And then there was the like most staticky conversation I've ever heard in my life. Dog, mine, yes. And they're like, okay, we'll accept that. So we're good to go. We do the paperwork. I say, yes, making decisions. We'll take that urn and the paw print and the lock of hair and fur, I guess, and we're out. And then the vet tech comes in to finish the paperwork. And she keeps saying, gosh, you were such a good friend. You're such a good friend for doing this. And I was like, actually, this is not the hardest thing that I've had to do today. So if we could wrap this up, I got to go pick up my husband from the ER. She's like, okay. So, it was the wildest day. I can't make this up. It was the wildest day that I think I've ever lived. This was a day of pure hevel. Now, in that moment, in the morning, under those circumstances, calling Rob made absolute sense, right? Under those same circumstances, 100 times out of 100, I would make the same choice again to call him. But after I called him, the world being hevel as it is, things just got worse, and like so much worse. And it shouldn't have, but it did. Because in a broken world, making good choices does not always result in good outcomes. I labored that day to produce good outcomes, but my labor was in vain. Now, that doesn't mean we don't try. In all the teachers' rants about how futile work is, I just want us to notice as you read the book, the teacher's complaint is not so much about the work itself, but what man's work fails to do and provide for him, namely, that it cannot provide anything eternal. No eternal purpose, no eternal results. In chapter 2, he talks about these huge projects that he's undertaken, these gardens and groves and buildings and reservoirs, and they're beautiful and fruitful. And he doesn't say that the projects are bad. He just says, I can't take it with me. Listen to verse 20. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. The teacher is lamenting. All of his work, even his good work, is temporary. He can't take it with him. One day it will start to crumble and become dust, and then one day no one will ever know it existed at all. And that's what he laments, that nothing lasts. And then, and this is our key for this week's teaching, then the teacher tells us why. What's the reason for this hevel that nothing lasts? He says this in chapter 3. There is a time for everything, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time for war, a time for peace. You know you were doing it. Verse 9. What do workers gain from all their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. God has set eternity in our human hearts. That means that we, by our very nature, long for a world that is permanent and eternal and perfect. We long for work that we know will last. And so a world where our work and wisdom can only produce temporary, finite results is a world that is infinitely frustrating to the eternity that is set in our hearts. Our hearts know this isn't what we were made for. We were made for forever. And so we have an innate longing for completeness, perfection, understanding the pattern behind eternity and what God is doing in it. Because of sin, we are locked in time, but our hearts are bursting with eternity. And it's painful. It's painful to have a heart full of eternity in a body full of decay. And it will be until the day that we die. What the teacher, I think, is really warning us about is not that work is bad and we shouldn't do it. He's not telling us our work is worth less, but he's telling us that we are worth more than the sum of it. It's not going to make us somebody. We already are. And even if you are the best at what you do while you're alive, someone will eventually come along who does it better. And where will that leave us if our work is all we are? And he wants us to know our work will be fleeting and temporary. No matter how hard we labor, it's not going to be timeless because we are locked in time. No matter how hard we work on this side of heaven, the product will be imperfect because creation and every creature in it has yet to be perfected. The teacher wants us to adjust our expectations to our work and what it can really provide for us. And I want us to sit with this for a minute because I think that complaining about my jobs over the years has been one of the most enjoyable pastimes I can think to do with family and friends. We love complaining about our jobs because they are imperfect. We work for imperfect people. We do imperfect work for those people, although we don't like to admit that part. We are led and managed imperfectly, and with a heart full of heaven, imperfection feels like hell. I get it. The teacher would agree this feels awful. It feels like a cosmic hamster wheel where we're running and just getting nowhere. And this people and this job, they don't feel like what I was made for. They're not. It's not. You were made for heaven, eternity. C.S. Lewis writes, if I find within myself a desire which nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. We were made for a perfect world. And guys, this ain't it. This ain't it. And while we love how that sentiment sounds in a book, we often refuse to accept what it means in a workplace, namely, demanding perfection from this world before the appointed time that God has planned to perfect it will just lead us into frustration. It is in vain. And that is true of our work. And it is also true of our relationships. The good news is that we will all be perfected one day. The bad news is that we have to die to get there. On this side of heaven, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. We do life with people in varying degrees of imperfection every day. None of us are capable of perfection this side of glory, even if we are trying our best. And so expecting perfection from people before their appointed time will only lead us into disappointment that maybe we don't need to experience if we just made some space in our eternal hearts for our present imperfections. And to do that, the teacher gives us a useful little tool in chapter 4. Verse 5, fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. See, he's not saying work is worthless. He says fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. In other words, if you don't work, you don't eat. And we can all agree that eating is good, but also endless work in an attempt to outwork the fall or hoard our wealth to insulate ourselves from the effects of it is futile. You might work, and then a tragedy just takes it away. So what does the teacher prescribe? Not folding both hands in idleness, not grasping with both hands in greed, but one handful with tranquility. The Hebrew word used here for one handful means a cupped, open palm. It is a handful that we hold loosely because we know it's a gift that we didn't earn, that we don't deserve, and that we can't control. And so we hold it in a posture that is willing to release or to receive even more. And then our other hand is free in tranquility, to take a bite, to raise a glass, to embrace a friend, or to raise a hand in thanksgiving and praise. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. This is what the teacher wants for us, an open hand, which is the only posture that an eternal heart in a mortal body can receive tranquility in a broken world. As it is with our work, so it is with our pleasures. Chapter 8, verse 15. So I commended the enjoyment of life, because there is nothing better under the sun for a person to do than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany them in all their toil in the days of the life God has given them under the sun. I had the opportunity to travel to Italy last summer, and it was a truly awful experience. Yeah, that whole country could break off into the Mediterranean, and I would not mourn it. Partly because I got a terrible upper respiratory infection on the way over, but then secondarily because we went to the Amalfi Coast. And it's beautiful, but what I didn't know about the Amalfi Coast is that it's like on a mountainside, so you have to drive this crazy one-way winding road that just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in order to get there, and I get terribly motion sick. And so once you're there, the only way out of there is to go on that windy road or go on a boat, which again makes me very motion sick. So the whole time I was car sick, I was boat sick, and I was sick. And I'm telling you this story because I imagine there's a portion of you here right now listening who are thinking, oh, you poor well-educated white woman in your sad Mediterranean vacation. I feel so bad for you. And listen, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with your sarcasm. It's why I brought it up. I am repenting of how much I have complained about that 10 days as though something horrible were happening to me, when in fact I just got to be sick somewhere stunningly beautiful. I got to have breakfast on an open-air balcony overlooking the sea. There was a hotel dog named Oliver who was the same size, shape, and personality as Doug from the movie Up. I was not suffering. But when I imagined, before I went, what my coastal Italian vacation would look like before I took it, I didn't imagine mucus or vomiting. It's true, those were an unwelcome surprise. And I became so laser focused on what on the things that I didn't want, I missed so much of the things that were beautiful about that place that I could have enjoyed, because I was so focused on the unenjoyable elements that I did not expect. And we do this to ourselves, right? Have you ever met someone who goes out for a really nice dinner, but all they can talk about is the bad service? Or someone who moves into a beautiful new house, but all they can focus on is like the water stain and one part of the ceiling. Or someone who maybe has like the family that you've always wanted, a spouse, an adorable set of kids or something, but all they can talk about is how good you have it as a single person with no responsibilities. Do you know someone like that? Or are you someone like that? We do the same things with our pleasures as we do with our work when we demand perfection before it's time. And when we do this, we miss it. We miss the pleasures that we could have enjoyed. We miss the simple pleasures and gifts that are all around us. And guys, we're doing it to ourselves. It is not life that's ruining life for us. It's us and our expectations. When we only look for what isn't, we cannot enjoy what is. The poet Elizabeth Browning writes, "Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round it and pluck blackberries." Do we pluck blackberries from a burning bush because we fail to notice the glory of God in this place, and then probably complain that the blackberries aren't that ripe anyway? We miss so much of heaven here on earth when we only have eyes for perfection, but before it's time. And so what is the antidote to all our acrimony here under the sun? I think it's gratitude. The antidote to a miserable life that is laser focused on all the imperfections that remind us this is not the eternity that we were made for. The antidote to that is gratitude. And gratitude isn't something that you can force yourself to do, but it is something that we can practice. We practice gratitude. And we should, because many of us are sorely out of practice. I mean, just taking a minute at the beginning of each day and thinking of 3 things that you're grateful for in your life or things in the world that you're grateful for. And if you're having trouble coming up with one, you can always default to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, who paid the penalty for our sins and reconciled us eternally to the Father in heaven, just to get the creative juices flowing. And a practice of gratitude begins by not living in the past, all the things that you wish were different yesterday, and not living in the future, all the things that you hope to make different by tomorrow, but living in the present moment. Noticing the glory of God in this place now. It's here, but we don't notice it. The glory of God is present in a breakfast of burnt toast with a good friend, but we don't notice it because we're so focused on finding where the perfectly browned toast is. The glory of God is present in a bad cup of coffee because, let's be honest, it's still coffee. The glory of God is present in laughter and exercise and good books and soap that smells like gingerbread, but only if we notice. Ecclesiastes 3:12, I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. You understand? It's not the eating and drinking and toil he's after. It's the joy. All the joy that we could find in these simple things if we did not expect them to be perfect before their time. Gratitude requires acceptance of the world as it is, not as we would make it. And that doesn't mean we don't hope, and that doesn't mean we don't try to make it better. We should not fold both hands in despair like the fool, but we should do all of our trying with an open hand to release or receive what God gives us in this moment, accepting that for reasons we don't yet understand, this is part of his good plan for me and for you in this season in time. I don't say this flippantly. I'm not trying to give easy answers or to sweep suffering under the rug. I'm not saying this world isn't terrible. The author of the book isn't saying that. He's saying, yeah, this is terrible. This is hevel. Life is hevel. But that's not all it is. It's not all hevel. How we experience this life will matter in large part on where we fix our eyes, on the large part that is hevel or on the small parts that are not. I don't think acceptance is an easy thing to accomplish, but I think we misunderstand often why it is so hard. We don't want to accept what is because we think it's unfair and that we're owed something better, but the truth is we're owed even less than we have. In the story of creation, it's not God who invited decay into the world, it's us. We broke the good creation. With our selfishness and our pride, we made the eternal world temporary with our sin, not God. In fact, he is the one who has been holding back the decay and slowing it down for all time since. What we're owed is oblivion. What we're owed is death, the death we invited into the world. And the real reason it's so hard for us is not that we're owed something better. The real reason is that God in his grace chose to set eternity in our hearts. And so we know in this world of death, this is not how it's supposed to be. And he set eternity in our hearts so that we'll have hope and we'll work and even toil to usher in his return when our broken world will be made whole once more and our eternal hearts may finally be at rest in our forever. In this world, we will have troubles, Jesus tells us. It's when we expect different that resentment begins to strangle every place where we might otherwise find joy. And I know it feels cathartic to shake your fist at the world, but what do we gain by doing it? Does it change anything? Does it make it more bearable? Does it really make us happy? Just to feel like we're so right about how wrong everything and everyone else is. I am not unsympathetic to how hard this world can feel. This year has been one of the hardest for me personally. The holidays without my mom, it is terrible. And we lost 3 family members in 1 year. It was hard to catch my breath between the funerals. I sprained both of my ankles in the middle of September, both of them at the same time. And I wasn't even doing anything strenuous. I just fell over sideways like an idiot. And that was 2 days before I was supposed to fly out and speak at a conference in Massachusetts, and I had to not go. I get it. The timing on that made me want to shake my fist at the world, like, really? This is the cherry on top of my already challenging 2024? I want to shake my fist too, but I've done that. And what I'm saying is that it doesn't actually help. We are going to experience suffering in this life with or without God, but what I'm telling you from my experience with Him, it's better. It's better with Him. It's better because then I don't feel so alone. And it's better because then I can see that this isn't what He wanted for me any more than it's what I want for me. And it's better because it reminds me that perfection is coming. It's still coming. Perfection is coming to every rock and tree and butt-biting dog and imperfect human in this world, but it will come in God's good timing, not mine. Acceptance isn't throwing in the towel. It's not resignation. Acceptance is a gift. It will set you free. Because in acceptance of what is, however imperfect, we become free to find the joy in it, however small. And in finding that joy, we become free to be grateful. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. So listen, shake your fist at the world if you need to. God won't smite you. In fact, He understands tragic, unnecessary pain more than we could possibly imagine. He is more empathetic to it than we ever give Him credit for. So shake your fist when you need to, shake your fist if you have to, but when you're done, open your hand to receive the tranquility that only He can give. And open your eyes to all of the heaven that's crammed into the earth that we manage to overlook in our search for perfection here and now. We're not going to find it. We won't find it here and now. At best, we may glimpse its shadow or savor its aftertaste. As C.S. Lewis writes, catch the scent of a flower we have not yet found, the echo of a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have never yet visited. The way I see it, I can rage against not viewing the full picture or tasting the full flavor yet, or I can be grateful for these hints and whispers of it that I do get, and I can let that be enough. I can let it be enough. Until the perfection of eternity arrives, we can complain about how long that it's taking, or we can cherish these temporary gifts as God's promise of what's to come. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you. There is so much in this world that we have to be grateful for, but often it's so hard to focus on it because of all the hevel that crowds in. Lord, I pray for each and every person who is listening today that you would help us to cultivate hearts of gratitude, that you would help us to not overlook the bits of heaven scattered here on earth. Lord, help us to see it, help us to focus on it, help us to praise you for it, and help us to usher in more and more of it by being your hands and feet here in this broken world. We pray all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, in whom we put our hope. Amen.
If you don't build it, we labor in vain. Without your Spirit, we stand with no strength. And I know my time is passing away, and the works of your hands are what will remain. Let the favor of the Lord rest upon us. Oh Lord, establish the work of our hands. Oh Lord, establish the work number the length of our days, and pour out your power. We'll pour out our praise. Teach us to run, finish the race, for only what's done in love will remain. Let the favor of the Lord rest upon us. Oh Lord, establish the work of our hands. 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 Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. As we head into Thanksgiving, this is a wonderful opportunity to find those points of gratitude. And until then, hear these words of benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Go in God's peace. We'll see you next time.